Back in 2014, Oklahoma quarterback Trevor Knight was that guy. He carved up Alabama and seemingly became a household name overnight. But behind the viral moments was a story of faith, perseverance, and finding purpose beyond football. Today, he's opening up about what that journey taught him on and off the field. So with that said, let's see where they now with Trevor Knight.
Trevor, appreciate you being here.
Dude, thanks so much for having me. I know this has been a long time coming, and we've communicated back and forth. Thanks for making the trip down to me. You made it easy on me.
100%. We here for other things too, but this was one of the main things. I was like, I gotta talk to Trevor. It's been too long, so yeah.
It's awesome, man. Well, it's a pleasure. I'm a big fan of you. Obviously on the personal side as well, with all the things you put out. You did a video on me back in the day, and it was like, yeah, he used to be really cool and throw the football around, and now he's in the business world. He's just a normal person, which is totally great.
I'm glad you took it like that because a long time ago, here's the thing about social media is like specifically short form videos and things like this is that you have to assume, and there's some examples like this currently, you have to assume anybody can see it or the person you're talking about is going to see it. And so I'm glad it was good because I think back then, if I would have started everything over, I think there were very few occasions where maybe I was too harsh on somebody, but it's definitely something that I think about now when I was making videos in college where I was like, man, I really hope I framed that right because I've never tried to directly embarrass somebody. It's more out of like respect and trying to tell somebody's story because as we were just talking about off camera, I just love telling stories. So I'm glad you took it like that.
I definitely took it like that. And then of course, we were just talking offline about just sitting there scrolling through reels and all those types of things. I found myself on your page just looking and I was super invested in what some of these people were doing. So you definitely found a niche there where it's like, of course I know what I'm doing personally, but you start to see some of these names from the past. It's like, oh, they're doing that. They're a lawyer in Houston or whatever the case may be. So it's pretty cool content.
Well, and that's such a perfect transition because that was really the whole goal with this show is like, I think some athletes think, oh, they're doing a show of where they now or what happened to this person. And that's like a derogatory thing. It's like, no, I want to shed light. Well, obviously, we'll talk about your career. We'll talk about some of those moments that we were talking about offline. But I really want to portray you of you're more than an athlete. You're more than who you were in college or in the pros or in high school or what have you. And here are the other things you're doing, whether family, entrepreneurial endeavors, philanthropic, and like almost, for lack of better terms, bring that fan base back and be like, oh, this is what Trevor or whoever else is doing. And here's how I could possibly engage with him on a business sense, on a philanthropic sense, you name it. So that's always been like the goal.
Yeah.
And just hope that resonates.
For sure. Yeah, and I know we'll dive into a lot of different details today, but I think I always say this, and I do it in a joking manner, but it's so true. The commercial that they used to put out for the NCAA, it's like, most of you are going pro in something other than sports. There's so much truth to that. And don't get me wrong, my college experience and even the couple cups of coffee I had in the NFL was an amazing season of life. It was larger than life, right? I mean, there's just so many experiences that you get put on a pedestal that's quite frankly pretty inflated, and it's a transient period of time. But then, what happens next? And for a lot of people, that are invested into, let's call it Oklahoma or A&M football, they watch you for 4 years. They remember some of your stories, maybe forever if they're really memorable, if not a couple of years after. And then the next quarterback comes in and the next player comes in. And then before you know it, they don't necessarily remember that. But that person is going on to do great things, mostly because of the foundation that they built in playing sport. And I'm a huge believer in that, Adam. I think there are so many things from whether it's youth sports or high school sports, or if you have the opportunity to play at like the collegiate or pro level, you take those different lessons and you can apply them to something after that season of life is over. And you see a lot of guys be extremely successful.
100%. And yeah, we're going to touch on a lot of those things. And so before we dive in, I want to take it all the way back to high school. So I grew up Pacific Northwest. I'm from Oregon. And, I would like to think that football has grown and the intrigue has grown, but it is nothing, not even in the same ballpark or on the same football field as football in Texas. And so Reagan High School, the Rattlers, I wanted to talk about your experience playing football in the state of Texas and maybe how that just grew you as a person.
For sure. I'll go back even before high school ball, because that's really where my story starts. I have a twin brother, and we had the opportunity to play together in college. But because of our relationship from an early age, and we have an older brother as well, and so we were all kind of beating up on each other as brothers do. But the twin thing was unique. We both had interest in sports from a super early age, so we kind of always had that person that was inherently making us want to be a little bit better. So you go through, youth sports and into middle school, and just kind of, always wanted to be great. I was a University of Texas fanatic growing up. My dad went to school there. So my dream as I kind of was going through youth sports was, man, I want to be Colt McCoy. I want to be Major Applewhite. I want to be some of these guys that I've looked up to for so many years. And so my frame of thinking was, what do I do to get there? So I remember going and asking my dad, I'm like, Dad, my dream, a lot of us say this, right? My dream is to play collegiate football. It was not professional football at the time. It was, I want to go be a college football player. I want to play at the University of Texas. How do I get there? And this is so profound for my dad. He didn't go on this long deal. He was like, I want you to have a whole lot of fun, and I want you to work harder than the guy next to you. That's how you make it happen. And then he was honest with me too. He was like, it may not happen for you. We don't have anybody in our family that's gone and played, collegiate sports. So it may not happen, but if you just focus on those things, that's the way that you could get there. And so then, started to see some success early. We were big kids, and we just thought we were coached well, and we were seeing some success. So by the time I got to Reagan, it was like, okay, can play a little ball. He's going to compete in multiple sports. I played baseball, basketball, football. I ran track, all the different things. And so I was excited about that season of life. I will give a ton of credit in that season to my head coach on the football field. His name's David Wetzel. Unbelievable man of faith, unbelievable people person. It was so much bigger than just about the X's and O's. He wanted to make an impact in young people's lives, which really just, you connect with coaches in different ways. That connected with me in that season of life, where it's like, man, this person cares about me. And then if I do that, and then what my dad said, work hard and work harder than the guy next to me and have fun. This is a perfect storm here. So had the opportunity to compete for the starting quarterback job my sophomore year, which maybe in Oregon, that's a normal thing. In the state of Texas, at least when I was going through big 5A, now there's 6A. 5A was the biggest. We're a big school. That was hard to come by, and was fortunate enough to kind of win that starting job there. And that's just kind of where it starts, man. Now it's, what are your processes? Are you working harder than the guy next to you? Is the team believing in you? All those types of things. So I think foundationally it goes back well before high school, but I was so thankful for the coaching staff, specifically my head coach, during that season of life that really just poured into me and kind of elevated me to the next level.
100%. And so you're mentioning, the various different divisions of football here. And it's in your day, not to age you, in your day, it was like 5A Division 1 and like Division 2, right?
Yeah, so it's based off of enrollment.
Got it. Okay.
So 5A was the biggest, and 4 teams from each district in the state of Texas at the time went to the playoffs.
Got it.
The 2 bigger enrollment schools out of those 4 would go Division 1, and the 2 lower enrollment schools that made the playoffs would go to Division 2. And it really was just because there were so many teams. And so that's why they've now created 6A. They've just made another division because there's so many schools in the state of Texas. But yeah, we were, I want to say we were 5A Division 1 when I was competing in the playoffs back then. So we were the biggest and the best.
Yeah. And to your point, I mean, there's some dudes on the football field in Texas high school football. And I think I was reading that you played against, or your team played against Tommy Armstrong and Steele. And I was just curious, along with, a guy like Tommy, were there some other guys that you played, whether on defense or saw on the offensive side, that you're like, oh, they're going to be somebody at the next level?
For sure. I mean, it's scattered across the board. Now, I'll say, being from San Antonio, it's a unique city. We're a big city, but we're not just pumping out Division I talent, right? It's not like the Dallas Metroplex or the Houston Metroplex where, I mean, you go to school like Duncanville in the Dallas area and you got 21 guys on one team going to play Division I football, right?
Literally just interviewed Coach Samples yesterday.
Perfect. Yeah. That was teed up nicely.
Yeah.
So a little bit different in San Antonio. So it's a unique kind of fraternity of guys that have come out of here. But like Aaron Green was the year ahead of me. He went to San Antonio Madison, unbelievable running back, started at Nebraska and then ended up being a great running back at TCU, right? Malcolm Brown was at Civil Steel where Tommy Armstrong was at. Malcolm was one of the best running backs I've ever seen in person, ended up at the University of Texas, played for the Rams for several years. Phenomenal guy. Marquise Anderson, who Marquise is no longer with us, which is extremely unfortunate. But Marquise and I played together at the University of Oklahoma. He was a defensive lineman, also from Steel, phenomenal player. And I'm just naming a few here. There's a guy named Jace Amaro, who was a tight end at San Antonio MacArthur.
I remember him. Yeah.
He went to Texas Tech, was an All-American, huge dude. I think he played for the Jets for several years. And we played against each other on the basketball court and all sorts of stuff. And I still see him around town and things like that. So there certainly is some guys that made a huge impact after leaving San Antonio. It wasn't quite as big of a crop as maybe one of those metroplexes, but it's pretty cool.
Definitely. And so you started to your point, you started relatively early on in your high school career at a big, Texas high school. And do you remember your first offer?
For sure. Everyone does.
Yeah.
So, man, I'm not saying that I was just this humble guy, but I really was like, put my head down, go to work. And if it happens, it happens. I wasn't the guy like, oh yeah, I'm good. Like I'm definitely going to get offers. I'm going to play Division I. I kind of take the approach of it. I was in denial about it until it happened. So it was the off season and they're at Reagan at the time. They've built new athletic kind of wing now, but we came in these doors and then it was a long hallway that you had to get down to go to the football locker room. Well, like most high schools, there's a little bit of psych factor in this of we have got like a 5-minute passing period and we're expected to be out on the field dressed in 6 minutes, right? So it's unrealistic. So even as like a sophomore in high school was when I got my first offer, we're kind of like running through the hallway, which is a bit embarrassing, right? But want to be out there, be first in line, set precedent, all that kind of stuff. So off of the main hallway, there was a hallway that went up to like our meeting rooms. And I remember basically on a full sprint so I could get out to workouts on time, running past these two guys. I'm like, that wasn't Coach Wetzel. That was none of our other coaches. Who was that? And then I'm 10 yards past them and they're like, hey, Trevor. And I hear my name and I stop and I got my backpack and everything on. Super embarrassing. Well, it's a guy named Travis Bush. He was a running backs coach at UTSA right down the road. And I went back and I'm a little frantic and he's like, hey, Trevor, remember me, Coach Bush? I'm like, Coach, how you doing? He goes, hey, I know you got to be out at workouts, but just wanted to let you know we're going to offer you a scholarship. And I don't even remember how I responded in the moment. I think I said, thank you. And then I was like, man, thank you so much. And then he's like, all right, go get out on the field. And again, I was kind of in the same mindset where I was starting to get dressed. And I don't think it really hit me until maybe like our second sprint in after our full warm up and everything else. Like, oh my gosh, my dream that I had since I was this little kid that I asked my dad, how do I get there? It's going to come true. Like it just happened right before my eyes. And I remember going home that night. I was so proud to tell my parents. And I probably called them. I can't remember the exact details, but I was so excited to sit around the dinner table that night and be like, Dad, my dream's going to come true. Like this is the craziest thing ever. And it was pretty emotional. And then, as most people say, after that kind of started to roll in and had some bigger offers income behind that. But UTSA, Travis Bush, sprinting past him in the hallway right there at Reagan High School. That was the first one. It was a big deal.
That's awesome. And I'm super interested because you mentioned you're a Longhorn. You're a Texas guy through and through. But
was very key word.
Sorry, was. And this will come into play. But I'm so curious because I know that you originally committed to Texas A&M and then flipped to Oklahoma. But when did they kind of come on the table and how did that come about, the originally committing to A&M and then flipping to Oklahoma?
Yeah. So early on, me and my brother wanted to play together. And fortunately, he played receiver in high school. He's 6'5". He was probably 210. So he was a really good receiver. He wasn't quite fast enough to get big time offers at the receiver position. And then because he played receiver, he didn't put on all this weight. He wasn't heavy enough to go put his hand in the dirt. So he was getting traction from, some Division I AA schools and those types of things. But pretty consistently across the board, it was any school that I was talking to, they were like, if nothing else, we want him to come be a preferred walk-on. So we made the idea up pretty close. Like, whether he gets a scholarship in the onset or not, we're going to go play together, which was cool. And then because of that, we both decided, man, there's so many great options in the state of Texas. If it happens and it's a good option, we'd really like to stay in the state for geographic reasons. Mom and dad can go to games, all of our home games are there, so on and so forth. At the time, however, some of the Texas-based schools were in conferences that were interesting, right? So it was right when TCU, I think, had joined the Big East for a short period of time. It was like, love TCU, but probably don't want to go there because that defeats the purpose of playing in Texas. Every away game is way out of state, those types of things. So a large part, we said, we're gonna stay in Texas. My dream was still to get an offer by the University of Texas at that point. Right at that time was when Texas had an offensive coordinator named Greg Davis. That was the Mac Brown, Greg Davis regime with all the dudes, right? They had just went to the national championship in 2008, a couple years before, but it was time to part ways with Greg Davis. So they fired Greg. And the immediate OC right after that was Brian Harsin, which just came off of a major run with Kellen Moore at Boise State.
Yeah.
So I get on the phone. They're recruiting me, and I get on the phone with Coach Harsin, super respectful, unbelievable guy. I'm like, hey, Coach, my dream's to play at Texas. I've been talking to Coach Davis and Coach Dwayne Aquina and came up to camp. What's the opportunity? And he was just honest with me. He's like, hey, we're going to continue to evaluate, but as of right now, we're going to stick with my Boise commit. His name's Connor Brewer. And Connor is very interested in coming to Texas because his sister already swims at the University of Texas. Connor was a Scottsdale kid. He ended up transferring from there a couple times. And I know Connor to this day is a great dude. I don't think his career kind of ended up the way he wanted it to, but that's what the feedback was. Okay. So kind of started to open up the eyes, go through the process. And Johnny Manziel was the class ahead of me out of Kerrville, which isn't far from here. He was committed to A&M. I went up to College Station and ended up picking up an offer from A&M. I was like, man, that place is kind of cool. It's different. I'm certainly going to be the black sheep if I go there because I'm a Texas fan. My room at home is burnt orange right now. But they had a guy named Tom Rossley who was the offensive coordinator. He had been, in that seat for quite some time. Well, right after I commit there, I decide, man, Johnny's sold me on this deal. I went to a couple games. It's great. Well, that whole staff gets fired. And so I'm like, oh, well, that stings. Who are they going to bring in? They start talking about this Kevin Sumlin guy from Houston. They hadn't really recruited me at Houston all that much at that point. And so right as that started to happen, Josh Heupel called me. He's the quarterback's coach and offensive coordinator at OU at the time, obviously. And he's like, Trevor, I get it. You want to stay in Texas. Norman's like an hour north of the border. It's more like an hour and a half. But he's like, Norman's like an hour north of the border. Just come up and visit. Bring your brother. Bring your family. I just want you to look around. And so I was like, okay, I'll agree to that. So we go up to Norman, man. And when we got on I-35, which you're on I-35 for 7 hours from Norman, straight into San Antonio, man, by the time we turned off of Lindsay Street, which is the main street in Norman, onto I-35, me and my brother were in the back seat. We already looked at each other and we're just like, this is where we had to come. This is it. I mean, the opportunity, the way that they treated us, you're walking through the halls and you see nothing but the history of, the interlocking OU and the trophies and recently Sam Bradford Heisman and then Jason White Heisman. You go way back to Billy Sims and the national championships. And man, it was super impactful. And because of everything that was going on in Aggie land and kind of the rest of the makeup of the state of Texas at the time, we just looked at each other and we were like, this is it. So long-winded answer to say that was kind of the path through recruiting and how we ended up at Oklahoma to start.
That is wild. I know that, you're mentioning Johnny, and it's crazy. Like I'm sure there's so many examples of this in the recruiting and just college football space in general, of like the butterfly effect of people going places and people not going elsewhere. Because I heard a story, I think it was either on Johnny's podcast or maybe it was on Shannon Sharp's podcast, and Johnny was talking about how he was originally committed to Oregon, and he saw that one dude Mariota in camp, and he's like, nope, going to A&M.
Yep.
But it's just so interesting. I know you didn't say like, oh, I went to Oklahoma because of Johnny, but it's just so interesting to hear the behind the scenes as a fan and a viewer of like, that's just how, for lack of better terms, the politics is of recruiting, of like one little thing, whether it's family, whether it's some guy ahead of you, and I'm sure, competition is another thing too, but it's just interesting how that affects decisions.
It 100% does. Cause I mean, as a competitor, that's part of the evaluation process is like, what's the depth chart look like? Do I feel like I have an opportunity to play? Do me and the coach get along? Is he going to take a chance on me? All those different things go into it. But you're also 17, 18 years old. You don't really know what you don't know. So you try and lean on parents, but they're kind of wanting you to make your own decision. At least mine were. And so it is super interesting in that season of life where it's like, I made a decision that has and will continue to drastically impact my life forever. And the basis of what I made the decision on may not mean the same today as it did back then.
Yeah.
But it all works out for a reason. I'm a firm believer in that. And I love my time in Norman.
Yeah.
Great.
And now it's particularly crazy. You get NIL involved. You have 17, 18-year-olds having to factor in family, having to factor in coaches, other players committing money and agents now, which is just wild to me. I mean, again, you're one who directly played the sport. I was just a viewer and a consumer and a lover of football and specifically college football. I couldn't even imagine my 18-year-old self making decisions like that.
No chance. I know we could spend several hours talking about all this. I'll say this. I felt like when I was going through with none of that added on to the plate, that I had enough pressure on my plate with navigating, living on your own for the first time, going to classes, figuring out who you are as a man, building relationships, all the typical struggles that any normal college student would have. Tack on the pressures of playing ball, trying to be great, all those things. I can't imagine adding those factors into the plate. It's just, to me, it's unrealistic. And I know hopefully there's a lot of good counsel out there that's being additive. There inherently is bad counsel too. And so I feel for these kids today. And I'll finish with this. I feel more so for the high school kids than anybody else, because they're the ones getting the short end of the stick. They're young, they're having to make these decisions, but now you don't have the guys that aren't big time recruits that are getting opportunities. Because why would you? You can go and find the guy down the road at the mid-major that's going to impact our team today. Why would you do that as opposed to going and taking a chance on a guy that you're not fully invested in that could potentially be a great player? You just got overlooked. So I'll get off my high horse. We could spend a lot of time on it, but it is very different.
No, we definitely could. It's a wild space right now. Now I want to touch on, so you get to Oklahoma and you redshirt, right? You redshirt but I want to talk about the first time you stepped foot on that football field as a redshirt freshman starter, talking about your story, like that's your dream. But what is the feeling? I can only imagine it was just like this euphoric, a little nerve-wracking, but like euphoric feeling stepping on that football field.
Yeah, I mentioned kind of after I got the offer from UTSA, it was this overwhelming feeling of like, man, my dream's going to come true. But that's really only the first step. It's like, okay, I'm getting the scholarship. I'm going to go be a part of it. I think the real dream is you want to go play, right? So redshirted, sat behind Landry Jones my freshman year. Unbelievable human being. Learned a ton from him. That's as an aside. There was no way I was going to be ready to play as a true freshman. The guys that are doing that nowadays is unbelievable to me. I mean, unbelievable. Yeah. It's just shown like the talent level, the bar keeps raising higher and higher. I was not ready to play. Very thankful for that year in the weight room, in the film room, all those things. But going into the off season, I was like, all right, just like I have been my entire life, try and work harder than everybody in here. I'm going to try and have as much fun as I possibly can. And I did. I've always taken the stance of the quarterback room is the nucleus of the team. And so even though it's an extremely competitive environment and you've got ultra competitors all vying for one spot, I think the closer that QB room is, the better. So like Blake Bell, Kendall Thompson, Cody Thomas were all in that room with me, and we got super close. Blake Bell is inherently supposed to be the starter. He had played a ton of ball before, and I just went to work every day. And it's eerie, and I'll get to the end of the story in a little bit, but Bob called all of us in with Josh Heupel individually, and we didn't know what order we were going to be in. Cody Thomas was redshirting. He knew he wasn't going to be the guy that year. So it was me, Kendall, and Blake. I felt pretty confident with how I'd been playing through the spring and then the fall camp, but it's like at the end of the day, they're going to make a decision. I think I was the last one to go, but I just remember sitting there. It was a pretty quick conversation, and it was both Bob and Hype, and they were like, "Hey man, you've done a heck of a job. Really appreciate the way you've competed. You're gonna be the starter in 2 weeks when we face Louisiana Monroe." And probably similar reaction or lack thereof to the offer from UTSA. Super grateful, coach. Thanks so much. Won't let you down. Those types of things. But it didn't hit me in the moment. I remember leaving that meeting, walking out. It hit me a little bit quicker this time, and I was just overcome with like, all right, now I fulfilled my dream. And there's dorms there now, but right across from Oklahoma Memorial Stadium, there was a big parking lot that we parked in. And I went out there that night by myself. Of course, I called my brother immediately, who was, in the dorm room next door, and we got together and we were hugging and everything. And then I called my parents. They were all excited. But I went out to my truck that night, and the lights in the stadium weren't on, but just kind of the lights lighting up, University of Oklahoma, Gaylord Memorial Stadium, all that was right in my view. And dude, I just wept. I mean, I was so emotional because I had never sat out of anything before. And it had been a year plus since I got in there, a year and a half. And I put in so much time and dedication and work. And it was just this overwhelming feeling of, man, this is paying off. I get to run out on that field and fulfill that dream here in 2 Saturdays. So man, it was the coolest feeling in the entire world.
That's a movie-worthy story.
For sure. For sure.
And I just kind of wanted to touch on it. So in that first season, and you're living your dream out, was there something that you realized as you're kind of playing those games, and also I think they're dealing with some injuries and such, and they're kind of leaning on Blake a little bit as well. What was like some of the first thoughts that you realized when you get to actually play at this high level of college football? Was it just like pardon my language, but like a holy shit, like defenses are really good? Like, what the thing that you realized playing some of those games? And yeah,
I think there's a lot of things. I think one of the first things from a physicality standpoint is, okay, these hits actually hurt. They didn't really hurt in high school. You kind of slip out of them, but these guys are huge. The game does move a little bit faster. But on the flip side of that, I think after my first play, which I should have pulled the ball and pitched it to Trey Millard, he probably would have scored from 75 yards out. I just handed it off. I was a little bit nervous, I'm sure. But very quickly, in really probably the first drive of my career, I realized, man, these are white lines just like I played all my whole life. These guys, yeah, they may be the best from their teams coming from all over the country, but they're lacing up their cleats the same that I am, and I'm made for this. I was prepared for this, and so now let's just go ride. Let's go compete. But you mentioned that me and Blake went back and forth, and there's, just because you get named the starter week 1, you got to go perform. Yeah, you got to go perform, and I embraced that pressure a lot. Again, social media was out, and I'm so thankful that kind of stuff just never really affected me. I certainly saw stuff on Twitter and whatnot, and you could probably track throughout a game like, oh man, I just threw a pick, and I'll walk you to the office to get your transfer paperwork, and then you throw a touchdown. It's like, oh, he's going to win the Heisman.
Right? Yeah.
Like all that kind of stuff is fun, but I didn't really let that stuff get to me. But just there is an inherent amount of pressure when you feel the weight of an entire university on your shoulders to go perform, and I think it's even more so than the weight of the university. It's the weight of your own self. You put so much time and effort in your whole life trying to be great, and now you're on a massive stage, and it's what you always hoped and dreamed for. And that's why the guys that go do it at a high level, they're made to do this, because it's like they embrace every single moment. And you want to be great for yourself. And then you add in all the other stuff on top of it, which makes it hard. So I think kind of 2 sides of it. Yes, definitely a harder game. There was some like, hey, welcome to the show type of moments, and certainly hits. And then the other side of it is like, I was made for this. It's a pretty cool deal.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're talking about national stage. I want to fast forward a little bit to the Sugar Bowl.
Yeah.
And I mean, talk about probably some hits that hurt, and talk about a talented roster, especially that defense of, CJ Mosley, Landon Collins, Clinton Dix. Talk to me about that game.
Yeah. We got the at-large bid. I think we were talking offline. They should not have played in the Sugar Bowl that year. If it wasn't for the kick six, they're going and probably repeating in the national title game, which that year was the Jameis national championship year with Florida State. So we're sitting in, as a team, last year the BCS. We're like, all right, who are we gonna play? And boom, it pops up on TV, just like it does for everybody else. We don't get privy to that. I guess they want natural reaction or whatever else. And I remember it was like kind of a flood of emotions. It was like, oh no. And then it was like, let's go, and that was that second part of the statement that I just said, the let's go. Our team adopted that from the very first bowl practice, not just the players, but the coaching staff. It was like, again, you guys were meant to be here. You've had a heck of a season. You've won 10 games. We have pieced it together. But let's go. Nobody's going to give us a shot. Let's go out there, let's prep, and let's make it happen. But you mentioned some of the names. I mean, their roster was absolutely stacked.
It's insane.
Their coaching staff was even more stacked. Obviously, Nick Saban. You got Lane Kiffin calling the plays. You got Kirby Smart calling the defense. You got Mario Cristobal's on that staff. You've got Billy Napier on that staff. You've got Steve Sarkisian on that staff.
Like Lanning's a GA still, yeah?
Dan Lanning was a GA. You're like, oh my goodness. Oh, and then they had this little freshman that the first start of the game, he was running down on kickoff. TJ Yeldon ended up fumbling a couple times. So second half was really the coming out of the Derrick Henry shows. This absolutely massive human being that we couldn't take down. Thankfully, he didn't play in the first half. But yeah, they were absolutely fantastic that year. We were lucky.
Yeah. Just I feel like that was the era where it became so popular of like the sign of we want Bama, and that's just how good they were. Did you ever meet Nick Saban?
Oh yeah. Well, we played against each other that year. We shook hands. And then we've been around each other a couple times, but I ended up getting to play against him again when I transferred to A&M in Tuscaloosa. And it was a pretty close game, but they ended up getting us in the second half. So we caught up for a second after that game as well. But I have so much respect for him. How could you not? I mean, what he built prior to my time, and then well after my time, it was a thing of beauty. And so as an opponent coming in, you just knew that there were going to be no gaps. It was kind of this mentality of, hey, we've got to execute and we've got to almost play perfect to even have a shot at this game. Because if you make one or two mistakes, they are going to capitalize, and then the game gets out of reach very quickly. And that was the aroma of an opponent for all those years under Saban, which speaks volumes. I will say this about our staff and our team that night. I thought Josh Heupel put together a flawless plan. I tell this story all the time. Part of the game plan on the offensive side is you put together your top 10, which effectively is like, yes, the first play you're going to run, and then situational football, right? It rarely goes past play 3 or 4 because you get a penalty or you get a big play and it's first down and that was a third down play or what have you. I think we ran the first 9 of those 10 plays in sequence in order, meaning the plan was perfect.
Yeah.
Kirby Smart came into the game thinking like, hey, we are more talented in this team. We're not going to put in a whole bunch of wrinkles for the bowl game. We're going to do what we do. So everything that we prepared for was like the exact looks that we were going to get. And we just were able to execute. And then we had some big plays on all 3 phases. And that's what put us in a position to come out victorious.
Yeah. And you played Bama early on. You played Bama at A&M, but there's a middle Alabama game, correct? Wasn't there?
2 games.
2 games. Okay, I thought there was 3.
The one at OU freshman year.
Right. Okay.
And then the one at A&M.
Got it. My bad. But before we get to A&M, I wanted to take it back. We were just talking about this offline. Katy Perry shoots her shot on College Game Day.
Yeah.
What was that about?
Yeah, kind of like what I was sharing you, man. College football was so cool for the Saturdays for sure. But all the like tertiary things that come with that season of life are so cool. Yes, the Katy Perry deal, and I'm going to answer that question, but also like, man, just a really neat platform to go serve, around the state of Oklahoma and around the state of Texas and pour into young people. And I'll take it back. Looking up to Colt McCoy and Sam Bradford, who were just a little bit ahead of me, I remember watching a video that those two guys did together where they're like, man, we just want to make an impact on young people. And I was like, man, if I ever sit in that seat, I hope that I take the stance of I just want to do it the right way, like those guys did. So it is cool to see, guys ahead of you that do make an impact on young people. Quick aside, I took a picture when I was playing at A&M with Cade Klubnik, and he was a big A&M fan. And then he sent me that picture whenever he was getting recruited, and he's like, dude, you made an impact on my life. I was like, man, it's full circle. Maybe I was your Colt McCoy. I just wasn't near as good of a player. So back to the Katy Perry thing, similar to that. I was an okay player. I think I had a decent career, but there were things that made me a bit more famous, if you will. And Katy Perry was one of those. So yeah, we were at pregame meal. We were playing TCU that day.
I thought it was Alabama, so my bad there. I was like, that's the...
Yeah, no, it's TCU. I think Alabama was playing Ole Miss at the Grove, and that's where Katy Perry was at on game day.
That's what it was. Okay.
Yes, I think you're right there. That was like, I think that was either Bo Wallace or Chad Kelly. I think they won that game. I can't remember specifically, but either way, we go to pregame meal. Michael Honeycutt, who was our kicker, was like, hey, do y'all know who the celebrity picker is on game day today? And somebody was like, I think it's Katy Perry. It's like, oh, cool. All right. Well, we're going to watch it. We do walk through, then we get to hang out for a little bit before we go over to the stadium. So me and Blake Bell roomed together on the road. Blake's every bit of 6'6", 255 at this point, right? And so he's a big dude. So we're laying there, we're relaxing, we're watching College Game Day, and they come on with the picks. And, Katy Perry, very animated. She's going through all this stuff. I think she's doing a great job. Well, then it gets to our game. And we're sitting there and we're like, okay, what are they going to pick? Blah, blah, blah. We were number 4 in the country. So I think we got it across the board, even though we lost the game. And so it gets to her and she just starts going off about me. And I'm just sitting there and I'm just like, what is this? Well, I look over, 6'6", 255. His jaw drops and he is up on his bed in the hotel room, jumping up and down. He's like, did you just hear that? She called you out. She told you to call her. Like this whole deal. So Twitter just came on. My phone from every friend that I've ever had back home and everything else starts to blow up. I mean, completely blow up. And rightfully so. It was a pretty cool deal. So I'm like, man, 2:30 kick. We're about to get on the bus here in just a little while. I got to turn this thing off. So I turned my phone off. Everybody asked me if I came through and I ever talked to Katy Perry. I never talked to Katy Perry, and here's why. Number one, I had a girlfriend at the time, and I was very devoted young man to her, which maybe is silly. So I took this stance like I'm not going to disrespect her. That's an unbelievably silly answer. The real
stance,
the real reason was we lost the game.
Right.
We were number 4. Now, granted, TCU was great. Trevon Boykin, they ended up playing. I can't remember if it was a Peach Bowl or I think it was a Peach Bowl that year. They ended up having a great year. They stormed the field on us. I almost punched a dude in the face because he got up. And I'm just kidding. I would never have done that, but I was pretty animated after that game. It's not fun to get the field rushed on you.
Yeah.
But because we lost the game, I felt like, man, there's no way that I have the foundation to go and like kind of see this through. I think I ended up putting out people were encouraging me, a lot of guys on the team, like putting out a tweet later on that was half-hearted attempt. It never happened.
Yeah.
It never happened. But it was a really cool deal. Blake Bell jumping up and down on the bed. I guess it made me wildly famous. So today, everybody still asks me about, did you call Katy Perry and the Alabama game? Those are like the 2 big moments that people still talk about.
Yeah. I had to ask because I was doing my research and I remember that moment and I was like, oh, I got to ask him about it. But no, and so I kind of, fast forward a little bit more. When was the first time that you heard the name Baker Mayfield?
Man, I was a huge fan of Baker. I knew of Baker's name because he played at Lake Travis in Austin, which is an hour and 15 minutes north of where I grew up. And I knew he was, like Travis, powerhouse school, all those types of things. He had taken over. He's a year behind me. So my senior year, I believe he had taken over for Michael Brewer, which is Charlie Brewer's older brother, halfway through the year because of an injury. And so I had known his name. And then I'm at OU, and we're obviously all watching ball and really invested in it and everything else. And I'm like, dude, this true freshman walk-on is starting week 1 at Tech. Like, what happened? Well, like Davis Webb got, I think, sick with some virus. Michael Brewer had an injury, and so it was like insert Baker Mayfield. So we were watching him, and of course he was having just a heck of a year. And from a quarterback perspective, I'm like, man, I told you a minute ago, I wasn't ready to play as a true freshman. And this guy had been here for 2 months because he came later in the summer, and now he's starting and operating this offense, and nobody had given him a shot. Like, how did this guy fall through the cracks? So had a ton of respect from him from day one. Never in a million years thought that he was going to end up at Oklahoma. Knew there were some family ties there, but it's like, hey, he should have the reins in Lubbock for the foreseeable future. So a lot of respect from the onset.
Yeah. And did you see any sign, even at Oklahoma because I feel like, Baker's a great player. He's been in the NFL for a long time, but I feel like he's kind of having a moment right now. Was there any sign of that when he was at Oklahoma of like, oh, this, again, back to like kind of what we were talking about at high school, this dude is going to be something at the next level?
From day one.
Yeah.
100%. He came in and had to sit out for a year, and he would tell you he really enjoyed that year. I think he won like 5 intramural championships on softball and everything else. But I'll say this about Baker: he's an incredible athlete. He's got an unbelievable arm. I think he's an ultra competitor. We all see that, but he has an innate ability for people to follow him and believe in what he's trying to accomplish. And it was awesome for me because I love culture, and I love putting people in the same boat and rowing in the same direction. I'm a big team guy in that sense, even today. And to watch people gravitate towards him, and he wasn't the guy on the field, was a really special thing to watch. He just had a knack of being involved in every different type of group, regardless of your background or your interest or your likes. He commanded respect from everybody in a non-threatening way. So he began to kind of earn his keep there. And now I'm not saying that at the same time I wasn't getting that. I hope that most of the guys that I played with would say Trevor was a great leader, all those types of things. But I think Baker, I learned a lot from him just by the way that he interacted with his teammates and the type of competitor he was. So he had to sit out for a full year. We, of course, end up going 8-5 that year and get completely blown out by Clemson in the Russell Athletic Bowl. And then Bake and I, we brought in Lincoln Riley. So the position was open, or the competition was open at every position. And so we started the battle. Now, I had been through battles before, and so had he, obviously. And so it was an extremely friendly competition. And I got a lot better that offseason because of the level in which he was playing and vice versa.
Yeah. And when did the idea of transitioning elsewhere come into play?
You're talking about transferring?
Mm-hmm.
So go through the offseason into fall camp. I really, and I'm not saying this to make myself sound like I was a great player and certainly not on the level of Baker Mayfield, but I think that it was a relatively tight battle. I was the incumbent, so inherently it was like, hey, we're either going to replace this guy or we're going to stick with him. I think probably the last week of fall camp, I maybe didn't have the greatest week, and very similar to my story of walking into Bob's office and getting named the starter. It was almost like deja vu. It's not hype anymore. It's Lincoln. All 3 of us are walking in. It's me, Baker Mayfield, Cody Thomas, and this time I walk in and it's like, hey, we're gonna start Bake. But immediately was like, be ready. I was a captain on the team. It's like, we need you, and be invested. All the good things. So the aroma walking out of that, just from a competitor standpoint, was the direct opposite. It was like, oh my gosh. I started to have all these feelings of, self-doubt. They were transient I was a pretty positive guy, but self-doubt and embarrassment, I felt like all these people were sitting in class were going to, think I was a loser because I lost my job, which is wildly untrue. And all this was for a very short period of time, probably minutes, if not an hour, that I was feeling sorry for myself. But man, I just kind of picked myself up and I was like, I'm going to be the best that I can be. I'm going to support Bake the best I can. I'm going to be ready to go when my time's called. Of course, Bake runs away with it. I mean, phenomenal year, then phenomenal career and all that stuff. I think that was one of the funnest years of my athletic playing career because I had to learn how to try and be a leader without being the guy on the field, which I never had to do before. So I just got to invest into teammates and all that kind of stuff. It was pretty cool. So we get towards the end of the year, and I'll be as brief as I can here because it could be a long story, but having a great year. It's the first year of the college football playoff. So we're in a seat to potentially get into that, which we did. And we get the nod to play Clemson again in the college football playoff. Deshaun Watson, the whole deal. We're playing in the Orange Bowl. Well, I had built a great relationship with Bob Stoops and even Lincoln at that point. I think the world of Lincoln. And I just had this stirring in my chest because of the timing, right? I was like, man, I feel like I can play a lot of places in the country, but I'm completely invested to our mission here. I'm a captain, and I don't want anybody on the team thinking like I'm jumping ship before we're about to go into one of the biggest games in program history. So, and again, thankful for the relationship. I was able to go to Bob and Lincoln on the side very confidentially and say, hey, what do you guys think? And Lincoln gave me some profound advice that I'll never forget. He looked at me, he goes, Trevor, I was at Tech, and then I got the job at East Carolina to call the plays. I was running to that job. That was an unbelievable opportunity for me. And then prior to coming to Oklahoma to call the plays, there was multiple job offers that may have made sense more so than where I was at, but I wasn't running towards it. They said, basically, selfishly, we'd love to have you here. We think you're great, but if there is something that you're running towards, we fully support you in that because we think you can play a lot of places too. So, man, I was just so thankful for that posture that they had. And so no transfer portal, anything like that. I end up going and doing a bunch of research and I make a list. And I have to walk that list of schools. And it was based off of, what's the QB room look like? What conference are they in? What coach do they have? Kind of the typical things. I didn't want to just go somewhere to go somewhere. I wanted to run towards something, take any advice of Lincoln, and I was going to have an opportunity to play. So took it to our compliance department. They had to fax it to the compliance departments at these schools. And then they would physically walk it down to the coach's office and we could start, conversing. So wild deal. That was right all around the time that we were about to play and then right after playing Clemson in the Orange Bowl. And then it was pretty fast and furious from there.
Yeah. And so you decide on A&M, or there was the BJ. I mean, you committed there prior. I'm sure was there an existing relationship or
not really. So Mike Sherman was the head coach when I committed before. He was the one that got fired. The guy that really, this is kind of a small world deal. The guy that really made me want to go to A&M was not Tom Rossley. It wasn't Mike Sherman. It was a graduate assistant who called me and he sold me on the dream of playing at A&M. And I was just like, man, I love that guy. Like he's probably going to be a big time coach someday. Well, it turns out that GA at the time ended up marrying Mike Sherman's daughter. So he went with them to Miami. He became the QB coach. Long story short, he's the head coach of the Cincinnati Bengals today.
Oh,
yeah. Zach Taylor. So Zach Taylor was a GA that recruited me at A&M and did an absolutely phenomenal job.
Yeah.
So all that staff was gone. They were not on my list of 15. And the reason was they had Kyle Allen, former 5-star, and this little guy named Kyler Murray, who ended up winning the Heisman as well. So I tell people all the time, man, if you came in elbow distance of me in college, you won a Heisman. I just didn't win a Heisman myself. So I called Kevin Sumlin because my thinking was I don't want to play in the Big 12. I'd love to go somewhere like the SEC or the SEC West specifically. And that's the closest one to San Antonio to home, back home. Everything else would be out of state. And I didn't know if it was going to be like a Tulsa or a North Texas or something like that level, or if it was going to be big time. And the response immediately was like, oh, I'm going to get an opportunity to go compete at an awesome school. So really what it came down to was Les Miles was at LSU. They had a need at the time. Gus Malzahn was at Auburn. They had a need at the time. That was right after Nick Marshall left. They had a couple years of, marginal quarterback play. And then A&M, I was like, all right, I'm going to call Kevin Sumlin and just see what happens, because there was some turmoil in the QB room going into their bowl game. They played Louisville and Lamar Jackson and got destroyed. Jake Hubenak, who's a dear friend of mine, we work together now, started that game and played pretty good, but it was Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson's kind of coming out party. So I called Kevin Sumlin, and he's like, hey, man, really appreciate the call. We'd love to have you from a leadership standpoint, but I think we got things figured out. We're going to roll with Kyler and Kyle. Totally get it. Totally respect it. So I'm still kind of cultivating these relationships with Gus Malzahn and Les Miles and some others as well. Those are the main two. Within that week, Kyler decides he's leaving. Kyle decides he's leaving. Now my phone rings. It's Kevin Sumlin. Hey, man, you've got a need. We've got a need. Think this would be a great spot for you. Man, I went home. I prayed about it. I thought about it. And the stars just kind of aligned and made the decision to head down to A&M. So all of this happens. This sounds like a drawn out story. All this happens within like a 10-day period of time. So it's just fast and furious. And, you're still a young kid. You've been through college football, so you get it a little bit, but you're still like, oh gosh, what's going on? A move across the country, the logistical side of it, all that kind of stuff. So it was a fast and furious process, but it was a pretty cool one.
Yeah. Again, it's the butterfly effect. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Just things happen so quickly, and you may see an opportunity and just run with it.
Right.
And you had some dudes there. You had a great team, especially some guys on the wide receiving core, Josh Reynolds, Ricky Seals-Jones. What were some of your best memories there? What were some of your best games, best memories? Yeah.
Man, from the onset, just talking about the university as a whole, I went there kind of like this. I got a year of ball left. I'm going to just play ball and then see if I can go play in the NFL. A&M's a special place. The culture of that place just wraps its arm around you. And from the moment I got on campus, it did that. The people there are great. The fan base is great. And then our locker room was so much fun. You mentioned Josh and Ricky, and Christian Kirk was on that team. Travion Williams, who's still playing in the league, was on that team. Obviously, Myles Garrett and some of those guys on the defensive side. It was just a special group all the way around. And we knew we had an opportunity to be pretty good. And so it was just like, the grass isn't always greener when you're transferring. And that's my message, even with the transfer portal and everything today, is, man, it is hard. You go from putting all your time, blood, sweat, and tears as a red shirt and maybe multiple years to win over a strength staff and a coaching staff, and let alone your fellow players. All that stuff doesn't happen quickly. You got to find where to go eat, dinner in a new town. You got to get to know these people on a personal level. All that stuff means something. So fortunately for me, the grass was greener with my situation. I had a level of respect from the guys from the onset, just because I had played a lot of ball before. So that kind of expedited it. But man, it's an overwhelming theme. I got there. My mindset was, I'm going to work as hard as I possibly can, win these guys over. And hopefully we're going to have a whole lot of fun doing it. And we did. So we started the season 6-0. We ended up 8-5, which haunts me forever. Battled some injuries. We lost a couple games that we shouldn't have. But overwhelming, like everything that had happened at OU, the ups, the downs, and everything in between, getting to flip a page, go to another amazing university, have an amazing year, be able to be named the starter and kind of cap my college career off that way. It was really cool. And I got to do it closer to home in the SEC West, which was awesome as well.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I have to ask, do you have a Myles Garrett story?
Oh, I have too many. I have a permanent bruise on my left hip because the guy was incredible. Our left tackle was a guy named Avery Genesee, unbelievable player and a great human being. Played in the NFL for a little bit and then played in the UFL for a long time up until this last year. And so he was a very good left tackle. This just speaks to how good Myles was. Every single day in practice, Myles would go off the edge, And then, of course, I was wearing a red jersey. So he would take his big left hand and he would slap off on my hip. Like, hey, I got there, you know? I swear I still have a bruise on my left hip because it happens so often. He just was truly, in every sense of the word, a man amongst boys. He's still that way at the highest level. When he wants to go, I don't think there's anybody in the world that could stop him at what he does. And I'll say this too about Miles, really, really intentional human being. Pretty soft spoken, not going to be your guy that's just, spouting off all over the locker room. But unbelievably nice, unbelievably giving. And when it was time to go to work, he just put his head down and went to work.
Yeah, absolutely. I got the opportunity to interview him at the Super Bowl. I think it was like a year or two ago he was there with Gatorade. And I, that was my first impression was like almost, I don't know if timid's the right word, but like quiet and like respect, super nice guy. But to your point, in the most respectful way, the dude is terrifying. Like huge. I couldn't believe it. Yeah, I mean, I'm not a tall guy, but I just could not believe how tall he was and how he moves.
Yeah, and how fast he is, and all the athleticism. I mean, you go watch him on a basketball court. He's put out some video. It's like, this is not a real human being. I did get an opportunity to. We did a mission trip to Haiti. Every year I was at OU, we did that as well at A&M. Miles was a part of that trip, and so getting to spend a week with him in that setting, see his heart and his heart for giving back and those types of things. I was fortunate enough to see that in a different light, because a lot of people watch him on Sundays now, and he is spectacular, but he's an amazing human as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And we were just talking about his speed, but your speed was no slouch either. I wanted to move on to the combine, and you ran a 4.55, I believe.
4.54.
4.54.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
Get that extra. Talk to me about your combine experience, because I again been very fortunate to interview a lot of guys, and a lot of guys have been able to experience the combine. It's just, I think, again, from a viewer's perspective, you just don't realize the nuance and the preparation and, I don't know if you'd agree with this, almost kind of the weirdness of the combine. And just kind of want to hear your experience of the combine.
It is weird in a lot of ways. Yeah, everybody sees what's on TV, which is the test day. That's the last day that you're there, after you're already completely exhausted from the whole slew of things you have to do before that. I did test well, and I knew I would. I would consider myself a pretty athletic quarterback. So I knew I was going to run well. I knew I was going to jump well and all those types of things. But my experience was wild. You get there day one, and I may be a little out of order on some of these things, but basically the biggest steps are, you get there, you immediately start all this medical evaluation. You go to the hospital, you give all this blood, you get poked and prodded by a million different people. They're checking you out. I get it. And then the next day is kind of another round of big medical day, right? They've got on-site MRI stuff so that you can get an MRI on the spot to check out anything and everything. You walk into several rooms wearing nothing but your tights, and one of the physicians from the team will come to you, and they've got all your history right there, and they'll go through and ask you all these different questions, ask you about your former injuries. Then they'll lay you on the table and do tests themselves, and they put together a whole report. And then that physician will go to a group of another 4 or 5 physicians, present their finding and all their tests. Like, I had a PCL injury. Or like, hey, he had a PCL injury in 2013. I tested it, had a good sticking point, or whatever their language is. And then if those doctors want to also put hands on you, they come up and kind of redo all the tests. And then you go to the next room and you do it again and you do it again. And then you go get your height and your weight and your hand length and all some of those stats that you start to see pop up online. It's just it's a taxing day.
Yeah.
And then every day at the end of the day, they have what they call the train station, which you wear a lanyard and it's got your whole schedule on the back. So the train station is all 32 teams are sitting there, and it's scouts or coaches or whoever is going to represent that team. And it's typically multiple. And man, you just walk around. It's like speed dating. They'll grab you and be like, hey, I'm so-and-so with the Vikings, and sit down. Half of those conversations are, hey man, tell me about your family. Tell me about your background. The other half are, hey, we've only got like 2 minutes. Drop your favorite play on 3rd and 8 from the -40 with, strong dog coming from the defensive side. So, and now they're testing you. So you're doing that for multiple hours, which is emotionally exhausting. It's a job interview. So you're trying to be on alert and show them your personality and all that kind of other stuff. And then you've got your scheduled formal interviews on the back. So you'll pop out of there and you'll go sit down with GM or offensive coordinator or head coach and have some of these formal interviews as well. So that's your whole evening. You wake up the next morning, they wake you up at the crack of dawn. You're doing like a drug test, those types of things. So you're still exhausted. And now it's the whole cognitive testing day. So everybody talks about the Wonderlic test, and that's the stats that go out. But there's like 12 other tests that you do. You're doing cognitive testing all day long. So now you're mentally exhausted and you're physically exhausted and so on and so forth. You repeat all of the interview process that night and everything as well. And then finally, like I said, on your last day, cameras come on, you're throwing on the field, you're completely exhausted. I'm surprised more people don't rip a hammy or things like that because you're just completely drained. And then you try and perform at the top of your ability. So it is a strange but amazing experience.
Yeah.
And I'll share this because I think it's really funny. I did not drink any alcohol for my entire combine prep. None whatsoever. I was dedicated in, and I just wanted to be the best that I could possibly be. So me and another quarterback named Mitch Leidner, he played at Minnesota. We were kind of in the same group, and we had the same flight itinerary going back out of Indianapolis. So we got to the airport on the same shuttle, and he's like, "Hey man, you want to grab like a big old juicy burger and like maybe a beer?" I was like, "Sure, that sounds great." So sit there, dive into the burger. It's great. And I'm drinking just like a normal 16-ounce, draft beer. And I get about 3/4 of the way through it. And I'm like, "Mitch, this is a little embarrassing to admit, dude, but I think I'm super drunk right now." Just because I was so clean for so long. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, the combine experience, it was amazing. I performed well, which was great. Man, I really thought I had an opportunity to get drafted. It didn't end up happening. And that's okay. But that was an incredible showing, and just I'm so fortunate that I had the opportunity to be a part of that.
Yeah. And I read that you trained with Dak Prescott.
Trained with Dak a bit. Dak was the year ahead of me, but we trained at Tom Shaw Performance out in Florida, and so Dak was back there. Jameis was out there as well. Dak was back out there for several weeks, coming off of his Rookie of the Year season. So that was pretty cool. I had known Dak through the Manning camp, which the Manning camp is such a amazing camp. Externally, you get to interact with the brothers and Archie and all the people involved. But my favorite part of it was you got to know the rest of the quarterbacks in the country on a personal level. So like at that point, Dak and I already had some level of relationship because we spent a week in Thibodeau together. So pretty cool deal.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And you were just mentioning, the transition into the NFL, didn't get drafted, but there were some teams that wanted you to change positions. And what was your kind of thoughts around that?
Man, I think it was talked to it simply because I was an athletic guy. I ran the ball a lot in college. I had some move and some shake. And then the way that I tested was like, hey, this guy's probably a fringe or draft guy at the quarterback position. He's super athletic. Could he play somewhere else? I don't think it ever really like manifested into true conversation. I think it was some ideas that caught some wind in the media. I had never, been in a backpedal and play safety or anything like that. I don't think it was necessarily realistic. I did, however, when I was with the Falcons, me and Matt Schaub split all of basically the scout team reps. Because it's not like college, right? You got a 10-man practice squad, but a lot of times when the offense is on the field, there's starting defensive guys that have to be out there, or at least two deep guys kind of giving a look. So it wasn't like college where you're running two different fields and you got nothing but scout team guys giving the look. Guys had to step in. So if we were playing like, oh gosh, I don't know, at the time, the Seahawks, and it was Russell Wilson, a little bit more athletic QB, I would take a lot of the scout team reps on offense. And then if we were playing Tom Brady and the Patriots, Matt Schaub would take more of those, more of the pocket passer. So I kind of raised my hand. I was like, hey, look, we got two deep guys running backside comeback routes on the scout team look. when Schaub is doing most of the quarterback looks, let me throw on some gloves and I'll go run a few routes on the outside. So I caught a couple balls in scout team and maybe scored a few touchdowns at receiver, but it was never to the point where like, oh, this guy could potentially play this at the NFL level.
Yeah. And what was kind of your impression of now being in the NFL to some extent? Yeah. I mean, is it
Unbelievable?
Yeah.
In some ways, also strange in others.
Yeah.
I think, if you're a drafted guy or you're maybe we'll call it top half of the roster, it's a very different experience than the bottom half of the roster, which of course, roster's not all that big. It is a puzzle piece. And I give so much credit to GMs and coaching staffs for making those decisions on a week in, week out basis. But for somebody like myself, I get signed to the practice squad. I'll share this story. There was a defensive lineman from the University of Washington that was on the practice squad. They cut him to sign me. Okay. Well, I get signed and then there's an injury on the defensive line. So like 2 days later, they sign him back to the practice squad. Somebody else got cut. He ends up playing that Sunday in our game. I think he has a sack. He certainly is in on a couple tackles. And then later on in the season, he gets cut again, passes waivers, and then is back on the team. So I say all that to say it's kind of hard to follow. The back end of a roster really is like this puzzle piece of what's the need, what are our injuries, who do we have to plug in here, and you have to make it fit at the expense of the human being. It's like, man, I just got cut. Another team could pick me up in 24 hours, and I'm literally taking my duffel bag because that's all I'm living out of and going to a new city.
Jeez.
You know what I mean? So there's always one guy, and everybody I think that would talk to you, at least in my position, is like there's one guy on every team, and when he walks in the locker room, you kind of, your breath stops a little bit because he's walking up to somebody and like, hey, grab your playbook. Coach wants to talk to you.
Yeah.
So I'm going through the year. I think things are going really well. Matt Ryan's getting towards the end of his career. Matt Schaub certainly is. I think there's a good opportunity for me to stick around either on practice squad or maybe even get into the 53-man at some point if I just progress. And ended up backside route, stuck my foot in the ground, felt something in my back, and got an MRI, ended up rupturing a disc in my back. And there was just no way I could go on without having the surgery. So I ended up going on IR. I tried to come back. They cut me right after that. And then I did the road show of trying out for teams. I mean, it was just a crazy season of life. Didn't get signed. So that was kind of the end of the road from an NFL perspective. I wish it would have lasted longer. And it really is, you got to have a coach that believes in you. You've got to make the most of your opportunity because of that puzzle piece that I mentioned, you are so replaceable in the NFL, especially if you're not one of those top guys.
Yeah.
So you gotta earn your keep every single day.
Yeah, absolutely. And when did you kind of officially, because I know that you're saying, you had the NFL stint, but there was also like the AAF. And when did you kind of officially hang it up?
So I had the back surgery. I got cleared, got cut from the Falcons, flew to, I think, 13 cities to do one-day workouts.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a lot. And again, just kind of the behind the scenes, I was so thankful for the season of life, but I'm also watching my brother and all my buddies. They're establishing, normal job careers. They're playing, beer league softball on Wednesday nights. Some of these things that I know it sounds crazy, but in that season of life, you kind of long for.
Yeah.
It's like, all right, let me pick up my duffel bag and we go stay in this Holiday Inn or that Hampton Inn or wherever, It was kind of tough. And so ended up going to the combine deal for the AAF and thought it'd be fun. It'd be cool. I still want to play, so I did it. Got drafted by Rick Neuheisel in the Arizona Hotshots, the mighty Hotshots, baby. And went back out to Arizona and played a lot of golf. I thought the league was run great. I was not the same. I wasn't moving the same. I had kind of this subconscious about my back. I wasn't the same. I actually got beat out for the job by John Wolford, who's a great little player.
From Towson, right?
No, he played at Wake Forest.
Wake Forest. Yeah.
And then played for the Rams for several years.
Yeah.
As a backup here. And so John ended up being a starter. I ended up getting in on some packages where I would run the ball and those types of things. But it was kind of becoming clear, like, hey, probably not going to make it back up to the league. And, how long do you want to do this type of deal? So I had already started when I was healing up from the back surgery, figuring out what I wanted to do in life. I knew it was going to come to an end at some point. And so, man, I got on the phone with everybody I knew from OU, A&M, Personal Network. My dad was a dentist. I realized I didn't want to do that. So it was a super awesome wisdom building kind of season of, hey, what do you do? If you were in my shoes, what would you do the same? What would you do differently? Tell me about your industry, all that kind of stuff. So I met a lot of great people and kind of developed some areas of interest. Now I'm in the insurance consulting world today. The only thing I ever told myself was I'm not going to leave ball and go and sell insurance, right? I mean, that was like the only thing. I was like, that just sounds super bad. I can hopefully unpack what I do today. It's not necessarily that, but I ended up connecting with a guy at a Cowboys Thursday night game. So went to the Cowboys game Thursday night with my buddy Cody Thomas, who I play with at OU. And the Big 12 championship was Saturday at the same venue, Jerry World up in Dallas, OU TCU. So we were going to go to that. So I'm sitting there, we're watching the games, Tony Romo, Jason Witten, all these guys. And there's some guys behind us that were inherently entertaining some clients. And I thought there was maybe 4 or 5 of them. Ends up being like 15 of them. And one of the guys right behind me, we just kind of hit it off. And we're, having a couple beers and having a good time. And I go, all right. His name was Brandon. I go, Brandon, if Jason Witten scores on this drive, I'll buy all of your guests a beer. Sure enough, Cowboys drive down the field. Jason Witten scores. I'm like, all right. And he's like, all right, I think we got 15. I'm like, well, those beers are like $18 up. So, yeah, okay, well, now I'm going to be broke. So he's like, all right, I go help you. I'm a man of my word. Let's go do it. So we're down there and he's like, hey, what are you doing now? And I go, well, I had this back surgery. I play in the AAF. I think it's coming to an end. And he is like, well, here, take my card. I'm in the insurance consulting. And it kind of fizzled out. I didn't care at all, right? But he handed me his card and I popped it in my wallet. And then I went and continued to play in the AAF after that. Well, I found his card in my wallet. And like I'd been doing, I was like, I'm going to call Brandon. He seemed like a good enough guy. And he's like, he answers the phone. I'm like, Brandon, remember me from the game? He's like, yeah, for sure. And
Can't forget all the beers.
Can't forget all the beers that you bought us. Yeah, you saved us a bunch of money. And I was like, well, man, I know you were telling me what you did, but unpack it again. What'd you say you did? And he goes, well, I'm technically in the insurance world. And I almost hung up. It's like, this is not what I was going to do. Because not that this is bad at all, but my perception of insurance is like State Farm branch, ripping home and auto policies, that type of deal. That didn't sound appealing to me.
I think it was probably a lot of people, honestly.
For sure. So he's like, hey, we're a consulting firm. So we don't sell a product. What we do is we come in on behalf of companies and we structure their employee benefits program. So health insurance, dental, vision, all those types of things. It's really a financial play alongside of understanding the product offering, attraction, retention tool to HR, all those things. And then on the other side of our house, we do basically what we call business insurance, insuring the buildings, insuring the auto fleet, insuring all those things on the business side, which is also a massive spin with an organization. So you look at XYZ company of, I don't know, 500 employees or so, they have a massive payroll, of course, they're paying 500 people. But outside of that, massive expenditure in what they put forth for employee benefits, and then huge expenditure on their business insurance side. So he's like, we get to step in and be a consultant for those pieces. I'm like, okay, so what would my job be? Would I start at the bottom and just be like thumbing things in? He goes, oh, no. He's like, I see you as a salesperson, and I'd want you to be out in the marketplace day one, meeting with business owners, CFOs, VPs of HR, and go sell what we do. I was like, okay, so you're telling me I have no experience in the business world. I'm coming off playing ball and getting my head beat in the ground for, my entire life. You want me out meeting people, sharing my story, and sharing our value prop. I'm like, man, that sounds like me. There's nothing wrong with earning your stripes and being behind a keyboard for a long time and building your way up to something. But I was like, uncapped commissions, right? Because you go close business, it's on your book of business. You are a hired consultant. And you just get to meet people. So I was like, okay, the opportunity's in Dallas. I'm dating a girl at the time. It's now my wife and the mother of my children, and she's in Dallas, so that makes sense. And Dallas is equidistant almost to the mile between Norman, Oklahoma and College Station, Texas. Ton of Aggies, ton of Sooners in Dallas. I got family in Dallas. I was like, I'm moving to Dallas. I'm going to work for this company. I'm going to be in the insurance consulting world. Man, I'm so glad. I'm so glad that I did that. I have bounced around to a couple of different stops for very specific reasons. I had the opportunity 2 years ago to move back home to the San Antonio area. We live in Bernie now, which is a great little suburb here in the Hill Country. And I have the opportunity to lead our office for a company called Higginbotham. And I oversee our benefits practice and our business insurance practice. I also get to go up to Austin and help lead our benefits practice up there. We got a bunch of amazing people, and that's what I do all day. I get out, I meet business owners, and I get to make an impact on their business. And it fits my personality so great. And I will say this, I'm super proud of the logo I wear across my chest. I think that's super important when you find something after ball is like, yeah, some people find a job because it's a job. I'm passionate about what I do. Now, do I love insurance? No, nobody loves insurance. They want to run around and go out the other door. But I am passionate about people and helping people and kind of the end product and getting to know people's story. So it's been an amazing transition from the field into what I've had today. And I'll tell you, man, back to the very start of our conversation, you asked me like about high school, and I was like, well, let me take a step back into my adolescent years and what my dad taught me and everything else. There are so many parallels between sport and life. And I'm so thankful for all the experiences I had in sport and the level that I got to play at, because each year, each moment, each experience, I got to learn more about hard work and failure and how to respond to adversity and working with a group of people that don't see the world exactly like you do, and so on and so forth. So like I've been doing the whole way through, go into business, learn as much as you can, work extremely hard, be respectful, earn people's trust. And so far it's been amazing.
Yeah.
I had an opportunity to lead and built a nice little career for me and my family so far.
Seriously, that's awesome. And I'm just curious, I've been, like I said, fortunate to speak with a bunch of, former athletes. And I've heard that the transition from pro to call it life is a difficult one. But I feel like you just are a perfect example of somebody who, as you kind of talked about, almost kind of combined the two of like, okay, this is what I learned, this is who I am in sports, but that's really no different than in real life and in a job such as insurance, what you're doing right now. And I'm curious, what would you tell somebody who's maybe trying to go through that transition of being was a pro athlete into a different endeavor? Because you transition really well, but I can imagine for a lot of people that transition is very challenging.
For sure. And I will say it is challenging. I feel like I've navigated it okay, but that comes with a lot of help of great mentors, great inner circle, people speaking life into me, all those types of things. Because I mentioned before, you're super famous in college or even in the pros. And some people even, that don't make enough money in pro ball for that to be their last thing, they still have to go get a job. And so one thing that I struggled with was like, man, I feel like my experiences so far in life are different than the guy sitting in the cube next to me. But we're on the same playing field. So how do I capitalize with my life experience to continue to be a step ahead and compete when that guy's been in the books and studying what we're actually doing? He's probably a step ahead of me in what we're doing today. How do I take what I've already done in life, which I feel like is an incredible professional experience, and reinvent myself into something else? And it's what I mentioned before. It's the foundational principles of like, I don't care what it is in life, winners win. Right. So I don't care if I'm selling insurance or if I'm not super passionate. We talked about this, about making, content and whatever else. But at the end of the day, like, find what you are good at, dedicate yourself to it, and then go be great like you've always been.
Yeah,
Right.
absolutely. I mean, it's, I don't know if I mentioned this off camera, but I didn't love content. I didn't really care about content, but I love telling stories and like helping people tell their story. And in that essence, I love my job. I love, doing content and stuff. But Trevor, that's all we got today. I really, really, really appreciate the time. This was an awesome discussion. And yeah, thanks for being here.
Thanks for investing in me in the hour or so that we've been doing this. This is amazing. Can't wait to see the clips and the bites from this one. Appreciate the opportunity, and anything I can ever do to help you and vice versa, just let me know.
Thanks for watching another Where Are They Now show. My name is Adam Ferris, your host. Make sure to like and subscribe, as it really helps us out, and click that bell so you will never miss a future video. And don't forget that we look at all the comments. We listen to you guys. So in the comments, let us know who we should sit down with next and answer the question of where are they now.